California lawmakers giving initial approval today for a measure that prevents law enforcement from cooperating with federal immigration officials.
This is another step toward the Golden State becoming a sanctuary place from top to bottom.
SB 54 is basically going to make California a sanctuary state, but just not a sanctuary state on steroids, because it's purposely written to shield dangerous, felonious non-citizens, which represent about 2% of our immigrant population, from having to be deported.
The sanctuary state bill will head to the assembly floor. If passed, it would require final approval from Governor Brown.
It actually makes it unlawful for our Department of Corrections, our county sheriffs, our police departments, our probation officers from having any discussions with ICE about the pending release of these dangerous criminals back into our streets and neighborhoods.
You're essentially having elected officials who are now saying that they won't contact Immigration Customs Enforcement in instances where someone is charged with human trafficking, assault with a deadly weapon.
The bill did include assault with a deadly weapon, but the pro tem couldn't get the bill passed in the Senate, so he watered it down. So what does it include? It includes human trafficking, child abuse, taking a hostage, stalking, solicitation to commit murder, elder abuse, felony with a hate crime enhancement, crimes for the benefit of aging, DUIs, and domestic violence. I think any of these crimes should be justification for deportation.
They're all in the bill saying we're not going to tell the feds if an illegal alien commits them and is convicted of that.
I'm in favor of it because it mirrors what we do here in Los Angeles already.
We have elected officials who don't recognize their oath that they took to protect and serve the people that elected them. Instead, they're looking to represent people who came in the country illegally, don't belong here, and are committing crimes against these very people they're supposed to be representing.
You think that because of the state law, those criminal aliens who are in other parts of the United States might migrate towards California and take up residence there?
I don't think there's any question of that. And again, that's already happening, given the number of sanctuary cities we have.
The fact is, California already is something like a sanctuary state. In 2014, we passed something called the Trust Act. And the Trust Act directed state employees to not assist in the federal enforcement of immigration laws. And as a result of that, even the Obama administration in the summer of 2016 through Loretta Lynch threatened to withhold $135 million in a federal grant from the state because of the lack of cooperation. Okay. This is one of the reasons why the state legislature hired Eric Holder at $25,000 a month to preserve those funds.
It's going to cause illegal immigrants from all over the country to come here because they know they're probably not going to be deported.
Sure,
but what is ICE going to do? ICE is going to go out into neighborhoods and interrogate neighborhoods, and people that have been quietly following the law, except for their immigration status, are going to get arrested and potentially deported.
If we're not allowed to have ICE in the jail and have ICE go through the database and decide who to deport and who not to, at the end of the day, ICE is then going to go get those same people that we release. But they won't be able to get them in a controlled environment like a jail. They'll now have to go in our communities.
The likelihood is that they're going to go into the communities looking for the individual, and my assessment would be they're not going to limit themselves to that individual.
We had a rampage 3 years ago by an illegal immigrant who had been deported and thrice returned across our porous border, murdered two police officers, a sheriff's deputy from Sacramento and a police detective from Placer County. This makes our state a mecca for this sort of thing.
Yeah. Now, Mr. Allen, do you think that it's going to pass in the Assembly?
Yes, I think it's going to pass in the Assembly just like it passed in the California Senate. It was entirely a party line vote, and the Democrats are united on this policy. The thing that's so crazy about it, though, Bill, is that Californians don't agree with the policy. You know, Californians, immigrant and native-born Californians, don't want these criminals in their community. And we're talking, again, as Senator Stone mentioned, these are not, simple crimes here. These are stalkers, these are child abusers, these are drug dealers. There's even a category of criminal. This is someone who has anthrax with, intent to actually do something with it. Those people wouldn't be subject to these ICE.
The sanctuary city policies that are in place now result in 650 criminal aliens being let out on the street every single month. So we have this toxic stew that the liberals bring to us where we're going to have more criminals on the street and less money.
If this bill passes and the federal government declares all of California a sanctuary state, we could lose federal funding in a lot of different areas.
The state of California collectively with cities and counties gets over $1 billion a day in federal funding. Now we know where President Trump has stood on sanctuary entities. He's going to turn a lot of that money off, that's just going to cause a lot of chaos in our state.
Obey our laws or don't take our money. And that seems like a pretty reasonable argument. If you're living in your parents' house and they say there's a curfew at 11 and you come home at 12, you shouldn't be surprised when they say get your own apartment. I mean, that's kind of the argument here. It's not about law enforcement or safety.
Some cities say that they don't want to be sanctuary cities. They say that they are afraid of losing federal funding. They weren't even invited up for the hearing on this bill. Why not?
Well, we think that our values are not for sale, and doing the right thing is not always free.
Are we going to be able to help them if they lose their funding? If the city of Hayward loses $10 million of critical funding, will the state make it up?
We don't think that we should run from our values and who we are based on the first threat of loss of funding. We will do all we can to support our immigrants and support our cities, but this is a critical issue because our immigrants are under full frontal assault from the Trump administration, and we must stand up for them.
Okay, when we're talking about immigrants, we're talking about those that are here undocumented, right?
We talk about immigrants are included undocumented and documented.
And we will continue to be a place of refuge, a place that immigrants can come to and where they can feel safe.
This is a country built on immigrants. Immigration is the fabric of our nation.
Is the country built on illegal immigrants?
The country is the strongest country in the world because of immigration. And so, yes, instead of building walls, we should be building bridges.
Don't you think this is just one more piece of evidence that's suggesting that people can't tell the difference between legal and illegal immigration?
Stop trying to blare the difference between illegal and legal. There's a big difference. We're Americans. We live the American culture and we have the American spirit. We don't steal, we don't lie, and we don't take other people's things.
Your bill would provide money for public defenders to defend people here, okay?
Yes.
So is my money going to be used to defend and to keep criminals who are convicted, have done their time in jail, and otherwise would be handed over to ICE? Are we going to now represent them?
The tax dollars that are in my bill does provide for attorneys for immigrants that are in removal proceedings with immigration.
So that would include people that are released from prison. And last year, 11,000 convicts were released from California prisons and handed over to ICE on holds, in part through cooperation with ICE. That would stop.
Yes.
And this bill has an urgency clause, which means that if it were to pass and be signed, it would take effect immediately.
Imagine what the ordinary, hardworking, tax-paying citizen who believes in law and order feels in California right now. I feel very badly for them.
We think that our communities are safer when we have sanctuary cities and sanctuary states because victims will come forward and notify law enforcement about. Are we safer
if those people that they victimized, the criminals, are then allowed back on the streets and we defend them from being deported?
People watching from around the country, gentlemen, are just aghast. Why? How crazy has your legislature gotten?
What was really striking was the University of California at Berkeley, UC Berkeley poll. Look at this. It showed 3/4 of Californians themselves don't want sanctuary cities. The numbers are striking. Of course, a majority of Democrats, but the majority of Hispanics, 2/3, oppose sanctuary cities. But citizens would either have to wait until the next election or call for a special election to vote on this.
Look, we can't allow illegals who are being deported over and over again to be able to stay in this country.
They're here in the U.S. illegally to begin with. They've then committed a crime, in many cases been convicted of a crime, and yet taxpayer dollars are wasted away paying for them to continue to be in here.
You know, there is a tendency, Congressman, here in the East to kind of dismiss what happens in California until we realize that's more than 10% of the U.S. population, you know, and if more than 10% of the U.S. population is in defiance of federal rules and laws, that's kind of scary, is it not?
I've got county sheriffs in my district who are mad as hell about this. Their responsibility is to keep their citizens safe, and they understand this makes California a very dangerous place, and they want nothing to do with this state law.
That amounts, in my view, and I think there's a very strong argument for this legally, to elected officials creating a system whereby they are harboring and concealing the criminal illegal aliens at the expense of the safety of the people of California.
My city is a sanctuary city. I live in fear, horror, terror. The mothers and the fathers, the families, we are going to plaster our children's pictures all over the state, and we're going to let them know what government elected officials have let the slaughter of our children happen in California and all these cities. It's a disgrace, a total disgrace.
You know, if I'm a California taxpayer, I'm paying a lot of taxes, and California's not so interested in protecting me. They seem to be more interested in protecting illegals and a political philosophy.
This sounds insane.
This is a government buying for the people, and we're sick and tired around this country of elected officials who are deciding which laws they're going to obey or not.